In the first century, a Jew was born in this city who was destined to blaze across the Roman world proclaiming the everlasting gospel. From Jerusalem to Rome and possibly even to the gates of Hercules, this fatigueless traveler proclaimed that Jesus Christ was Lord. He traveled more miles in the first century than most Americans traveled in the 20th century, and yet he was not an explorer or a geographer or a politician. He was an apostle. He was one sent forth to proclaim the good news that Jesus Christ was Lord. The New Testament registers over 13,000 miles that he traveled, visiting many of the cities, towns, and villages of the Roman Empire. In this fascinating series, In the Footsteps of Paul, we will trace his journey through the Roman world. We will seek to understand the cultural context and the historical setting of the world in which he traveled, and then to understand the message he communicated. We begin in Tarsus, where he was born and spent his early childhood. Then we will travel to Jerusalem, where he was schooled at the feet of one of the greatest rabbis of the age. From the holy city, we will follow his footsteps up the Jordan Valley and over the Golan Heights to Damascus, where he was converted. From the world's oldest continually inhabited city, we will travel to Antioch, Queen of the East and third largest city of the Roman world. This is where the followers of Jesus were first called Christians, and it was from this church that Paul was sent out as a missionary. From Antioch, we will trace his footsteps through the Roman province of Asia, visiting some of the greatest cities of the day. From the shores of the Aegean, he saw a vision of a man from Macedonia calling him to come over. We will follow his journey to the port of Neapolis, where he first brought the gospel to Europe, and then walked the Roman road out to Philippi, where he founded a church. He was strangely rewarded for delivering a demon-possessed girl here by being beaten and thrown into prison. Ultimately, Paul's ministry in Europe led him to Athens, the philosophical center of the world. Here he proclaimed Jesus before some of the greatest minds in the world on Mars Hill or the Areopagus. One philosopher accepted the gospel and became a believer. Paul would return to Jerusalem, where he would be arrested and sent for trial before Caesar. Our series will conclude in Rome, where he will be tried and ultimately beheaded. This will be an enriching and unforgettable experience as we trace the journeys of Paul on the screen and in your syllabus. And by applying the lessons of faith from Paul's life in the first century to ours in the 21st century, our faith will grow and deepen. In this first chapter in the series, we will begin here in Tarsus, the place where Paul was born, seeking to understand his roots and what qualified him to become the apostle to the Gentiles. By God's providence, his family heritage, his education, and his culture all converged together to equip him with a special understanding of the Roman world and grant him special privileges to travel throughout the empire. When we first encounter Paul in the book of Acts, he's not called Paul at all. He's referred to by his Hebrew name, Saul. Now, if you were to name your son after one of Israel's kings, you would probably name him David, not Saul. Why would they name their child Saul instead of one of the more illustrious kings like David? Because Saul was not from the tribe of Judah like Jesus or David. Instead, he was from the tribe of Benjamin.